Police removed boxes and boxes of body parts, evidence of what appears to be a psychopathic mass murder. Neighbors say the man was strange and that there was an odor coming from the apartment.
Jeffrey Dahmer developed his criminal profile of a psychotic lust killer when he began to murder many of the men in his neighborhood. He would begin by taking young gay men that lived in his area, and he would take them to his apartment where he would give them drug-induced alcohol. With this, he would surrender them unconscious, and then he would take advantage of them. After taking advantage, he would strangle them to death and use the corpse as a sexual object. He would perform oral and physical sex on them. After that, he would begin by dismembering each of the victims. He would cut off the arms, biceps, and head and preserve them as a trophy or memory of some sort. He would then begin by carving out the organs and then preserving those to later feed on them. This became a pattern in all of his victims. Each of his victims suffered the same loss of organs and wounds, and this became his signature criminal profile, known as the human slaughter.
Jeffrey Dahmer murdered and dismembered 17 men from 1978 to 1991, 11 of which were found within Dahmer's apartment. In 1991, the use of DNA for routine identification was years away from the average medical examiner office. Nonetheless, the victims were all identified within 3 days using a combination of fingerprints and dental records that were readily available to the investigators. Fingerprinting is used for crime investigation by forensic scientists as fingerprints are believed to be unique for every person, meaning no two individuals have the same prints. Forensic scientists also use fingerprints as evidence as fingerprints never change throughout the individual's lifetime, and they can be classified through the surface patterns and ridges. Like stated, fingerprints are individually unique. The individuality of a fingerprint is not determined by its general shape or pattern, but by the study of its rich characteristics. Fingerprints discovered at the scene and around Dahmer's apartment were found using powders and chemicals. Numerous body parts were recovered at the scene, which include 7 human skulls, 4 human heads, 1 dissected postcranial skeleton found in the freezer, and 3 skeletonized bodies in a 55-gallon plastic storage drum. Of the 11 victim remains recovered from Dahmer's apartment, 4 could be identified with fingerprints, and all of the identifications were confirmed by dental comparison. Dahmer's 16th victim, Oliver Lacey, was one of the victims to be reported to be positively identified through fingerprint analysis. Most, if not all, of Dahmer's murders were committed within his own apartment. His obsession with the deceased bodies allowed investigators to build victim profiles and made the investigation on the individuals a bit easier. Dahmer also took photos of his victims both before and after their death, which also helped during the identification process. DNA profiling is another forensic technique used in the Dahmer case that played an essential role during the investigation, as Kendra will explain.
In the case of Jeffrey Dahmer, the FBI had played an important role in conducting the DNA profiling used to identify the victims. They had obtained various pieces of evidence found at the scene, one including blood and other types of bodily fluids, both from Dahmer and his victims. There was a blood-smeared mattress and wall inside of Dahmer's room. This is a location where investigators believed he would kill and torture his victims. They had gathered DNA from these samples, including samples from the dismembered body parts and organs, and from this DNA analysis, the investigators were able to extract and analyze the DNA to confidently match the body parts to identify the victims.
Although most of the victims were identified by dental records and fingerprint analysis, there was also other useful evidence that was collected from the remains of the crime scene. Specifically, there was paint that was recovered from a couple of the skulls of the victims. The FBI was able to microscopically analyze the paint and determine that the paints from the different skulls matched in color, texture, type, and composition. It is important to note that a matching color is very important because according to Chapter 14 in our textbook, color is one of the most distinctive forensic characteristics of paint. Paint evidence is significant because it is very difficult to find matches amongst the qualities that I stated, such as color and composition. The FBI was able to get very specific information based on the identification of the paint, including which manufacturer sold the paint and where it could be bought. This could have been proven to be useful in placing the victims at the same location of Dahmer's apartment. Ultimately, forensic science was crucial in identifying the bodies found at Dahmer's apartment and to legitimize his confessions.